Welcome to another in the series of COVID-19 vaccine podcasts. I'm Dr. Carl Vartian, an infectious disease specialist and the Chief Medical Officer at HCA Houston Healthcare Clear Lake and Mainland. Today, January 15th, 2021, I will be addressing common vaccine misconceptions and myths. As healthcare professionals, it's important that we act as advocates for these vaccines, as this is the strategy that will save lives and ultimately end this pandemic. Please make sure you educate your friends, your families, and most importantly, your patients about the importance of getting vaccinated against COVID-19. If you hear any of these myths or misconceptions, please do your best to debunk them, as there are a lot of people who believe them, and it's important that we get the facts out to the public. First myth or misconception that I think is the most widespread is that these vaccines could not possibly be safe considering how quickly they were rushed to market. Now, it is true that the vaccines were developed and approved in record time, but that is a result of the technology that was used, not because there were any shortcuts in the development, testing, or analysis of the safety of the vaccines. mRNA vaccines have actually been tested in humans for a number of years for a variety of different infectious diseases, and human trials have shown the vaccines to be safe. The stage was set for when this new coronavirus was discovered to utilize the technology to snip a small piece of RNA, encapsulate it in a lipid membrane, and be able to inject it into patients to create an immune response. And that is exactly what was done. No shortcuts were taken. The same rigorous safety procedures that are used for all vaccines were applied to these mRNA vaccines. And I will say that tens of thousands of individuals in the different trials have been given the vaccines, and they have been remarkably safe. There are some minor side effects that you may be aware of. Some individuals develop fever, chills, body aches, soreness at the injection site, but these are short-lived, easily respond to over-the-counter analgesics, and are usually gone in a day or two. There do not appear to be any significant serious safety events apart from the rare occurrence of a severe anaphylactic or allergic reaction to the vaccines. We've learned a lot about that. It appears to be more common in individuals who have a history of allergies, and frankly, this is why we observe patients in the vaccine delivery areas of our hospitals after they get the shot and before we allow them to leave. As you may know, it's 15 minutes for individuals without a history of allergies and 30 minutes for those with a history of allergies. The second myth is that because we're giving an RNA vaccine, somehow this is going to affect our own host DNA. Well, this is something that has been circulating on social media quite a bit, but it's absolutely not true. The RNA that is injected is rapidly degraded once it gets into the body, and it does not enter into the nucleus of the cell, which is where our DNA is housed. It cannot and does not have any effect on our host DNA, and so this is clearly a myth that needs to be debunked. A next myth or misconception is that the pharmaceutical companies, at the behest of the government or some large, unknown, nefarious entity, have implanted microchips or RFID tags into the vaccine to somehow track us after we've been vaccinated. The idea is that they will know who got vaccinated and who did not get vaccinated, but it gets even crazier than that. People have talked about these chips will somehow exert mind control on the recipient, and of course, this is nonsense. Much of this is often attributed to Bill Gates, who is, of course, completely denied it, and it's kind of crazy to think that he would even be involved in this. But nevertheless, these rumors persist, And that's been totally debunked by anyone who's actually looked at this in any kind of detail. One other claim is that the vaccines will contain luciferase, which is the enzyme that makes fireflies glow. And again, the idea is that your arm will somehow emit light and authorities will know who's been vaccinated and who has not been vaccinated. Another myth is that the vaccine could induce sterility or infertility in women of childbearing age. This, of course, is nonsense. This seems to be another claim that is popular on social media, and it seems to trace back to a retired British physician who, although he worked for Pfizer about a decade ago, did not work on vaccines. But he believes that the antibodies that the vaccines produce against the spike protein of the coronavirus will somehow cross-react with proteins on the placenta, rendering the woman infertile. The New York Times actually published a whole article on this issue in their December 10th, 2020 issue, where they interview a number of experts who point out that this is actually an impossibility, that the coronavirus spike protein and placental proteins have almost nothing in common, and that it is simply inconceivable that antibody to one would somehow cross-react with the other. So I think we can safely say that this myth has been debunked. Another important issue is the safety in pregnant and lactating women. Now, it is certainly true that pregnant women were not included in the initial trials for either the Pfizer or the Moderna COVID vaccine. But there's really nothing new about that or unusual about that. Vaccines, or really most pharmaceuticals, when they're first developed, are simply not given to pregnant women in the trials. They're given to individuals who are otherwise healthy, do not have underlying conditions. It just makes it a little bit more difficult when dealing with pregnancy. You have to obviously wait until the woman delivers. You have to wait until the child is grown enough to make sure that there are no harmful effects. And none of these things are done initially in the vaccine trials. And that's really nothing unusual about the COVID vaccines versus other medications. The mechanism of action of these vaccines is simply that a piece of mRNA is injected into your body, and it creates an immune response by producing the spike protein. Of course, that triggers our host immunity to make cell-mediated and antibody response to that. And there's really nothing that would even remotely suggest that would be dangerous to the developing fetus or to the pregnant woman. Recall that we routinely vaccinate women against influenza and Tdap during pregnancy. It is the live vaccine that we avoid. So the MMR, which is a live attenuated vaccine, is not given during pregnancy. But these COVID vaccines are not alive. They never were alive. It is not a killed whole virus that we're injecting. It is just a small fragment of messenger RNA, which degrades after it's produced the immune response, and it is not felt that it would have any lingering effect on the mother or the fetus. Also recall that pregnant women are at increased risk for severe outcomes of COVID, so they definitely are a population that we would want to protect. Pregnant women, when they get COVID, have a increased risk of respiratory failure, need for mechanical ventilation, and even ECMO, and unfortunately, death as well. There is also increasing evidence that COVID-19 during pregnancy increases the number of preterm births as well as stillbirths. And the CDC regards pregnancy as a high-risk condition for the development of COVID-19 complications. Given the risk-benefit ratios, both the American College of OBGYN, ACOG, and the Society for Maternal Fetal Medicine have come down on the side of vaccination for individuals with COVID-19 who are pregnant, and that it should not be withheld just because the woman is expecting. As always, these considerations should always be done on a one-by-one basis, with the pregnant woman conferring with her OBGYN specialist. But it's reassuring that these expert societies, after they've looked at the data and the risks and benefits, have come down on the side of vaccinating these women. The same is true for lactation, with these organizations counseling that, again, given the risk-benefit ratio, there is no reason to withhold vaccination if a woman is breastfeeding. The mRNA, as I've mentioned, is rapidly degraded, and there's no suggestion that it somehow gets into breast milk or would be harmful for the nursing infant. And finally, I wanted to end with a discussion of something you may have heard about, namely herd immunity, and how difficult that will be to achieve unless we really all get vaccinated. Herd immunity is the term used by infectious disease and epidemiologists for the indirect protection of non-immune persons once we achieve a certain prevalence of immunity in a population. Usually it is a result of either natural infection or, more commonly these days, immunization. For COVID-19, it's been estimated that 70 to 70+% of the population will probably have to be immunized and rendered immune before we really achieve herd immunity. If you do the math, we're talking about maybe 225 to 230 million people would have to get vaccinated in order to achieve herd immunity. If we have significant vaccine hesitancy, where individuals believe the above misconceptions and myths and they decline the vaccine, we're really never going to achieve the level of immunity where all of us feel safe gathering in crowds and going about our business as we did pre-COVID. So it's important for you to understand the misconceptions that are out there, to be able to rebut them and to debunk them, and to advocate for these vaccines amongst your friends, your family, and your patients. Together, if we get vaccinated, we can end this pandemic, but this is something we all have to do in unison. Thank you so much for listening, and stay safe.